At a high-stakes global summit held in Geneva, the world's most powerful leaders gathered to shape the destiny of Africa without inviting Africa's true voice. One after another, Western diplomats stood at the podium with polished smiles and carefully written speeches, offering trade deals wrapped as gifts, aid poisoned with conditions, and promises soaked in quiet arrogance. The U.S. diplomat proudly announced a $120 billion initiative for infrastructure, healthcare, and governance, calling it a partnership for mutual prosperity. The French delegate chimed in, insisting Africa must rise, but only with responsible guidance. Nearby, the president of Kenya whispered to Ibrahimtraoré, "They always dress the leash in silk," to which Traoré replied quietly, "But it's still a leash." The British minister proposed a continental smart grid, proudly stating it would be monitored for transparency, under British oversight of course. President of Ghana leaned forward unimpressed, meaning yours, not ours. The IMF offered to restructure African debt but only in return for reform frameworks, real-time access to government spending, and external supervision. Traoré, still seated, remarked with calm clarity, "So you offer freedom in exchange for surveillance?" The U.S. diplomat smiled and ignored the comment, repeating, "We empower responsible choices." Tension thickened. The German delegate proposed green energy plans to help Africa lower emissions while Europe continued its industrial expansion. Traoré leaned toward Ghana's president again. "Isn't that the same promise they made 15 years ago?" Ghana nodded. "Now they ask us to give up coal, while they drill oil in the North Sea." The final pitch came from the EUA, $10 billion package for media and judicial reforms, stressing the need for independent media, which President of Uganda dryly dismissed. Free media, as long as it says what they like. Then, breaking all protocol, Traoré stood not with theatrics, but with purpose. The moderator stuttered, reminding him that his speech was scheduled after lunch. Traoré responded simply, "I won't need a statement." He walked slowly to the podium. Cameras zoomed in. Translators scrambled. And then, with the world watching, he spoke just one sentence, clear, calm, devastating. "If your aid comes with chains, you are not partners. You are wardens." Silence thundered across the hall. For a moment, nothing moved. Then President of Namibia stood and walked out. Kenya followed. Then Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, Algeria, Chad, Cameroon, Mali, one by one. Without a word, every African head of state rose and exited the summit in unity. The cameras kept rolling as the room froze. The entire African delegation had left the building together. The U.S. diplomat whispered, "What just happened?" And the French delegate, pale and shaken, replied, "I think Africa just walked out." In that unforgettable moment, the seats once filled with African voices sat empty, and for the first time in modern history, the global powers were left speaking to themselves. Africa had redrawn the lines not with bullets or speeches, but with silence and dignity. The world, for the first time, was forced to listen. That as the summit room scrambled for answers, the moderator whispered, "We're reaching out through diplomatic channels." No response yet. The French delegate adjusted his tie, flustered. "This is absurd." "One sentence," he said. "One sentence." The British minister muttered, and that one sentence just undid 30 years of policy frameworks. But the German delegate shook his head. "You don't get it, Tit. Wasn't just a sentence, it was a mirror." Across the street, in a quiet private lounge reserved for African leaders, the mood was calm, resolute. "We finally did it," said the president of Ghana. "We walked out, all of us. That's never happened before." The president of Kenya nodded. The O chairperson sat heavily in his chair. "They didn't believe we would They thought we'd fight each other for favors for crumbs." But the president of Namibia leaned forward and said, "Instead, we left the table." Traoré, quiet as always, added, "No, we flipped it over." The president of Nigeria cautioned, "They'll say it was emotional, dramatic, and African tantrum." President of Senegal responded firmly, "Let them say it. We're done dancing to their applause." The O chairperson muttered, "They're going to panic. Their newsrooms are already spinning it." President of Uganda laughed. "Wait until the markets open tomorrow. They'll see Africa isn't begging anymore." Back inside the summit, the IMF representative looked pale. "If they're serious about this walkout, it could collapse half of our development frameworks." The French delegate blurted, "Withdraw aid. Cancel scholarships. Let them feel it." But the U.S. diplomat interrupted sharply. "No, retaliation will only prove them right. We need a strategic response." The moderator asked nervously, "Like what?" The U.S. diplomat leaned in. "Divide them. Target their top economic allies, offer individual deals. Isolate Traoré." But the British minister sighed. "Too late. His speech is already viral. It's trending across 6 continents." The German delegate added, "He didn't just speak, he punctured something. It wasn't politics, it was dignity." In the press room, flooded with cameras, reporters shouted over each other. Why did all 54 African leaders walk out? What did Traoré say exactly? What's the African Union's next move? Outside, hundreds of protesters had gathered, but this time, they weren't protesting against their leaders. A protester with a megaphone shouted, "Today, Africa didn't ask for permission, they just stood up and walked out. The crowd erupted, chanting, "Stand up, walk out. Stand up, walk out." Back in the private lounge, the chairperson said, "The cameras are waiting. Shall we say something?" Traoré answered calmly, "No, not yet." The president of Kenya asked, "Why not?" Traoré replied, "Let them feel the silence we've lived with." The president of Ghana looked at him and asked, "Then when do we speak?" Traoré's eyes swept the room. "When we speak together and on African soil." The president of Nigeria nodded. "A joint summit?" Traoré answered. "No foreign press. No international sponsors, just us." The chairperson smiled. "History won't forget this day." Traoré looked ahead, firm. "No. But this day isn't the victory. It's the warning shot." 3 days later, the world still hadn't recovered. European stock markets tied. 2 African resources bled red. Headlines screamed contradictions. African leaders abandon global summit. Traoré sparks diplomatic crisis. End of aid era. Global South rising. In Washington, an emergency meeting was underway. The U.S. National Security Advisor spoke gravely. "They've scheduled an Africa-only summit in Ouagadougou. No media allowed. No Western observers." The Secretary of State added, "They're forming a new economic bloc. We can't afford to lose that influence." A Treasury official warned, "China's watching, Russia's watching. They won't miss this opportunity." The CIA director added coldly, "Neither will we. We need eyes inside that summit discreetly." Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, the city of Ouagadougou prepared for what no one believed, possible a summit of sovereigns, on African terms. No borrowed language, no foreign intermediaries. Only African flags, African food, and African voices. As president of Senegal walked into the hall, he said, "I never thought I'd see this day." The president of Kenya replied, "Me neither." No reception lines, no translators buzzing in our ears. The president of Namibia added, "Just us and a weight of what comes next." Traoré stood quietly, hands behind his back, watching the leaders enter. That morning, his mother had texted him a simple message: "Be careful. Lions are loud, but it's snakes that bite." The chairperson approached and asked, "Ready?" Traoré replied, "No, but I'm willing." The chairperson nodded, "That's enough." As the summit began, speeches were brief, raw, and real. No pomp, no rehearsed statements. Each president had 5 minutes and they all said the same thing, just in different tongues. Enough. Enough dependency. Enough conditional aid. Enough being lectured. Enough being treated as projects, not partners. The president of Ghana declared, "We must build with what we have. Trade with neighbors before strangers. Invest in African currency, not the euro or dollar." The president of Nigeria said, "We must defend our minerals, refine them ourselves. Sell on our terms." The president of Kenya added, "And if any of us falls behind, we lift each other." That, he said, is the Africa they fear. When it was finally Traoré's turn, the room fell silent. "We didn't walk out of Geneva to make headlines," he said. "We walked out to make space for ourselves, for our dignity, for our children." Traoré continued, his voice unwavering. "The world may mock us, but we are not here to impress them, we are here to unite us." Applause followed, not the empty, performative kind that fills diplomatic halls, but applause steeped in tension and truth. President of Uganda leaned forward, eyes serious. "They'll try to divide us one by one. Loans, weapons, partnerships." President of Chad added, "They'll dangle scholarships for our children, military gear for our armies, grants for our NGOs." Traoré nodded slowly, "And we'll say no together, or we say nothing at all." The chairperson exhaled deeply and said, "Then let's begin drafting the charter. A new bloc, economically sovereign, politically non-aligned, and unapologetically African." Outside, global media scrambled for updates, but found only silence. No press briefings, no leaks, only shaky drone footage and grainy long-lens photos, taken from far beyond the gates. News anchors speculated nervously. The leaders have agreed to a total media blackout. Whatever's happening inside may alter.